After I published my first video, it took YouTube only a few hours to index the title and the description. And so now, to test out that I can be found, I'm going to change my IP address to Sweden. That's just randomly chosen. And I type in search for terrestrial intelligence in quotes using a web browser that I normally don't use. And I show up in second place. I've spent a long time searching for different words and phrases online, and I'm getting a seemingly endless number of results for people who think Sandy Hook is a hoax or 9/11 is a hoax, and not a single person who is seriously investigating the question of whether all the information that we are being fed is a hoax. The closest thing I found is a post that claims that the internet is a government-run US operation running out of 3 government-controlled data centers, and there are only approximately 50,000 websites that are maintained, and the rest is all smoke and mirrors IT tricks. This is an interesting idea, but of course, this is only meant as a joke, and nobody is seriously responding to this. I think it's fairly easy to demonstrate that the range of ideas that we are allowed to entertain in this world is fairly small. And if there are really 7 billion people on this planet and are free to publish their ideas on the internet, you wouldn't see all these gaps, all these missing things on the internet. And I'm going to show you some examples. On the surface, it seems that we are allowed to question and criticize anything we want. Take, for example, the school system, where the most impressionable portion of our population is being indoctrinated. Everybody seems to agree that it makes no sense to make students cram their brains with useless information, from Adolf Hitler, who writes in Mein Kampf that it's senseless to have all these students learn French who are not going to be using it in the future, to Albert Einstein, who says that who laments the fact that he had to cram his mind with all this useless information, even though it was mathematical. He didn't feel it was contributing to his scientific research. And yet nothing ever changes. We still cram the minds of just about every person who grows up in our society with just endless amounts of useless information. And you can argue that's because we're not a very collaborative species. And that's okay, you can blame it on human nature. But you would think that among 7 billion people, there are quite a number of them who think that they can come up with a better alternative, not just in education, but in all the other aspects of life where we tend to do things in a very stupid way. In the pre-internet era, you could have argued that the people who know better are scattered throughout the globe and there is no hope for them to ever find each other and collaborate. But now with the internet, it's the perfect opportunity. We have so many diverse and ridiculously talented people in the world, from rocket scientists to people who are shown on 60 Minutes who can remember everything they did every day of their lives. What you don't find on the internet is any sort of collaborative attempt to improve the world. At least not in a way that makes me think people are expressing their ideas freely. I'll end this video with an analogy. When you play a computer game, you enter a reality that is an extreme simplification of our world. The reason is that to simulate everything in lifelike detail would consume too many computational resources. If the internet is a hoax, it will also seek to preserve computational resources. This means avoiding interaction whenever possible. Passive activities are much easier to simulate. If you just watch a movie, the movie doesn't have to respond to your input, so that's almost trivial to simulate. If people do engage in conversations with each other, we want to keep them as superficial and shallow as possible. The easiest thing to simulate is to just have people talk past each other. We take it for granted that the best athletes in the world give us very impressive performances, and yet for some reason, the best minds in the world all seem to engage in these extremely limited discussions and dialogues that carefully avoid reaching certain conclusions. What you're looking at here is an essay written by Bertrand Russell. He is considered by many to be the greatest philosopher of the 20th century. And in this essay, he criticizes an idea that is held by the majority, namely that the idea that work is virtuous. In other words, working is a good thing, working for a living is a good thing, and people who are going to work are doing something useful and productive. So if you read through this essay, which was written in 1932, Russell basically makes the claim that it's safe to say that half the population doesn't need to be working. So today the year is 2016, and 84 years of productivity gains later, we have gone in precisely the opposite direction. Instead of doing what Russell suggested and having our population work only half as much, we are now working twice as much. Why? Because women have entered the workforce, so roughly twice as many people are working. If 7 billion people really had access to the internet, a lot of us would be talking about the immense harm that is caused by the belief that work is virtuous, which is exactly what Bertrand Russell states in the first paragraph of this essay. If there are not a lot of people discussing this idea, then the least I would expect is a few people expressing their frustration about the lack of people who are talking about this. I think this could be considered the number one social problem in the world today, that no matter what you do for a living, the primary function or maybe the primary effect that you are having on the world is to sustain or engage in fraud. The only exceptions I can think of are farming and prostitution. And notice that the conventional wisdom is that you should find something that you like to do, and if the only choices that you are given are to do something that is essentially fraudulent, then you are being tricked into enjoying dishonesty. Now, if you're listening to this and you think you have a counterexample or you have a different but equally valid way of looking at it, I welcome you to contact me in the comments section. But keep in mind that I will be responding to any comments in my next video, and I will show no mercy, and I may make a complete fool out of you.